Well, good morning. We'll call our meeting to order this morning, October 22nd, 2025, of our public planning meeting. This is a public meeting concerning proposed zoning bylaw amendments pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. We have 3 files this morning. We have C4-25, the township proposed as of right on-farm diversified uses. We have an official plan amendment proposed, conditional zoning, and official plan amendment regarding inactive applications. Any person or public body is entitled to attend the public meeting and make written or oral submissions in support of or in opposition to any of the proposed zoning bylaw amendments. Written comments should be submitted to the clerk, Holly Malnick. Please be aware that planning reports will be presented to council when the applicable bylaw is presented for consideration at a future council meeting. No person or public body shall be added as a party to the hearing of the appeal unless before the bylaw was passed, the person or public body made oral submissions at a public meeting or written submissions to the council, or in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to add the person or public body as a party. Anyone wishing to file a notice of appeal is encouraged to seek legal advice on your appeal rights, given recent changes to the Planning Act because of Bill 185. So the first file to be considered this morning is C4-25, Township proposed as of right on-farm diversified uses. The proposal includes zoning bylaw amendments that would allow certain on-farm diversified uses as of right under certain conditions. The goal is to enable some OFDUs to occur without requiring zoning bylaw amendments. To proceed, the council will need to undertake public engagement. The township is recommending that an open house and public meeting be held on the proposed amendments. Township Council gave direction to initiate the creation of these policies through report PL 2025-017 at the February 19th meeting of this year. The purpose of as of right zoning is to eliminate certain zoning amendment applications in compliance with the township and county official plans, align with the Planning Act, and are consistent with provincial planning policy. Once this policy amendment would come into effect, the township would need to enact a bylaw or amend the zoning bylaw to initiate the use of conditions. The location of the subject lands of the proposed amendment, the proposed amendment would apply to all lands within the township, and so a key map of the area affected is not provided. Madam Clerk, may I please have confirmation that proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act?
Thank you, Mayor Milne. I can confirm that proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you, Holly. I'll now ask our planner to review correspondence received from commenting agencies and the public.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. That'll be me first, and then I'll pass it off to Bill.
All right. Welcome, Victoria.
Okay, so comments for the township proposed as of right OFDUs. Received some comments from Enbridge Gas, which does not object to the proposed application, but they do note they reserve the right to amend or remove development conditions. Grand River Conservation Authority also indicated that they have no concerns with the proposed. They also clarify that any development or site alteration within their regulated area requires a permit pursuant of OREG 41-24 and requests that GRCA is circulated on any site plan applications, any development proposals for properties within their jurisdiction, just to confirm any features or GRCA requirements. Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority had no objections to the proposal and understand that the lands within the township that are designated hazard lands and zoned EP will remain as such, and SVCA regulations will still be applicable to the lands that it's subject to. Historic Saugeen Métis had no objections to the proposed as well. Grey County provided some comments, including recommending a more generalized definition of OFDUs, similar to the PPS, County OP and Township OP definitions, as well incorporating agricultural related permissions, definitions, or provisions concurrently with those regarding OFDUs, consistent with the PPS, County OP, and Township OP. Also recommended special event types of OFDUs be considered by way of site-specific zoning bylaw amendment. as well additional thresholds or provisions beyond those in the service OFDU related to an As of Right farm, winery, cidery, distillery, and or brewery to directly link this use with farm inputs, a limited retail sale area, testing room, patio area, etc. Any proposal that this will require a site-specific zoning bylaw amendment as well. An additional provision they also recommend that speaks to servicing requirements for OFDUs, such as OFDUs that can only be sustained by local service levels and infrastructure that will be permitted. County staff will still continue to review site plan control applications through their streamlined approach as well, where county staff provide comments on an as-needed basis. As well, just a brief overview, township staff received one comment from the open house held on April 30th. So the public comment received indicated that they're in opposition of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment and outlined some concerns that the proposed changes would allow certain sectors of the community to bypass rules. And that's all the comments received at this time.
Thank you, Victoria. Bill, did you have something to add at this time?
Good morning, Mayor Milne, members of council, staff, and members of the public. Yes, there is a brief presentation I would go through if you wish at this time. Just outlining the nature of the rules.
Yeah, I want to make sure I get the process correct here. Madam Clerk, where'd she go? There you are. Would now be the appropriate time to have Bill do his presentation?
I believe it would be, yes.
All right, Bill, proceed, please.
Thank you, Mayor Milne. There's the presentation. I'm not sure if you have it on your screen or not. Slide number 2 talks about OFDUs as of right and the process that you've been through so far. And your 2022 approved official plan, it states in it that you will approve in countryside areas OFDUs as of right in the zoning bylaw. And there's 3 criteria that are there. No part of any OFDU is to be within 20 meters of a lot line. The closest part of the OFDU is to be within 30 meters of the building cluster. And any OFDU is 150 meters from a dwelling, school, or church. So in the proposed rules that were outlined in your report in February 17th, we tried to incorporate all those requirements. And the intent here is to reduce the number of rezoning applications while making sure that any unusual or atypical OFDUs that wouldn't typically comply with your official plan would be subject to a zoning change still and would have the full public input. April 30th, 2025, there was an open house, as Victoria said. And then, of course, today we have public planning to discuss these further. On the next slide, just as a summary of the OFD rules as of right. So the zoning is broken down fairly carefully. There's a definition that would go in of dry on-farm diversified use. It would basically include 2 types of uses: dry industrial uses, which is almost all the time what is proposed in Southgate, and service uses, which I don't know that I've seen one proposed yet, although there may be one forthcoming here shortly. And there may be service uses that are there. So the definition sort of lists what those are, and it refers to section 5.30 of the zoning bylaw, which would be a new section if council approved it. And that's where the certain dry industrial and service uses would be permitted. There's also a definition of on-farm diversified use operating area. That's the area that we used to call the rezoned area or the zoned area that would be set out in every amendment. But since you wouldn't have amendments if this goes through, you would just be permitting them, then we have to define that area within which they can operate clearly. So section 530, very quickly going through that, because these rules are obviously subject to change and input, but For dry industrial, woodworking, metalworks, those sorts of shops, you see the criteria that are in the official plan. You have to have a lot area of a minimum of 40 hectares, and that would allow you to go to a maximum operating area of 8,000 square meters with the 750 square meters floor area and 500 square meters storage. And then for 20 to 40 hectare lots where dry industrial is to be allowed, it's reduced to 2% of the lot area to a 4,000 square meter operating area. And then the floor area is a percentage of that. And then storage is limited as well. All of these dry industrial uses would have to be 150 meters separated from schools, homes, and churches, and they can't be any closer to a street than the farmhouse. The main thing, of course, with all OFDUs is they have to be accessory to agriculture. So the agriculture has to be a main use. And all the provisions of the A1 zone would apply to that, to any OFDU. So the setbacks and the lot coverage and those sorts of things would apply. Plus any new ones, and I'll get to those here when I'm through the service uses. The service uses are the cafes, the retail uses that sell materials primarily from the farm community. In the official plan, they have professional offices, bookkeepers, surveyors, art studios, cooking classes. They allow for hay rides and petting zoos and all sorts of things like that. So this would allow such service uses, but they're only allowed to have 1% of the operating area and 4,000 square meters maximum size would be their operating area. And then the floor space is also limited. These, because they're not industrial or dry industrial type uses, it does allow for a slightly closer separation to schools. Well, 75-meter separation from schools, homes, and churches. Again, these are all just proposed rules. They're subject to change considering all the comments that might be received today. And then at the bottom of that slide, there's some rules that apply to all the OFDUs that might be allowed as of rights. First of all, of course, the buffering and screening would have to be outlined. They're not allowed to have any operating area in EP or wetland areas. Site plan approval would apply, and an agreement would be required. And any changes or expansions to existing on-farm diversified uses would still require a rezoning change. There is in the service uses provisions for some outdoor seating. So up to 10% of the maximum floor area, which is a much smaller floor area than a dry industrial, you could have some outdoor seating, which is 10% of the operating area. There's provisions for screening any garbage storage areas. There's provisions for loading and parking. And as I said, the A1 zone regulations would apply. So that's the rules. The next 3 slides are just pictures of the different types of on-farm diversified uses. They were used at the open house to illustrate what might look at, so what you might see come forward that would be permitted as of right. So in the first picture slide there, that's a dry industrial use that's 40 hectares in size. And you can see such things as a separation from a church or a neighboring house. You can see the MDS would apply, say, to any horse barn or shed that's on there. You can see a picture in the dotted line of the operating area. And then there's some hazard on the back of that one. That operating area is not in that hazard zone, which is at the back. So that's picture 1, I guess, on the 4th slide. And then picture 2 on the 5th slide would be a dry industrial on a 20 to 40 hectare lot. Again, you can see the setback to the wetland in the back. You can see the farmhouse being within 30 meters of the OFDU. I think that's one provision that the county pointed out that we would have to make clear in this zoning amendment if council chooses to go through. And that, of course, would be subject to a further report. But you can see some of the other rules in place, such as the buffering on slide 5 and the school off to the, I guess, right-hand side there. And the final slide is a service use. So that might be a situation where there's a tiny restaurant or cafe in the front. You can see the outdoor seating area. That would be 10% of that floor area. The garbage and storage area would have to be screened. This one can be in front of the farmhouse. I think that's reasonable for service use where you have more people coming to it, that they wouldn't be back typically in the agricultural part of the operation. And you can see the 75-meter setback from the church and the abutting residence. The final slide, final 2 slides, the next steps. Any feedback that's received today would be considered by staff and council. There would be revisions to the regulations that would reflect any comments that have been received, any changes that council might talk about today, anything that comes forward from the public. Then there would be some direction from council whether you would want to proceed with the proposed amendment or consider alternatives or send it back for more research, however you choose to proceed following this. But I think that concludes any further presentation, and I'd happy to take questions or listen to the public input, and I appreciate the time to speak to you.
Thank you, Bill. Are there any questions from council at this time? There will be further opportunity later. Oh, sorry, Ken, go ahead.
Yes, your worship. I just wanted to add to Bill's presentation that further to the comments we received at the public open house, there was a concern that these amendments would facilitate a specific application that had been submitted to the township. And that was one of the concerns that came out from those that attended the open house. We have gone back and reviewed that application in context of the proposed regulations before you today. And we can confirm that this will not affect that application. It wouldn't advance that through the as of right rules. They would still have to go through a rezoning process. I just wanted to add that for some clarity.
Thank you, Ken. Okay, not seeing any questions for now. Township is the applicant, and we've heard from both Ken and Bill and Victoria, so we'll proceed beyond that. Is there anyone here present who would like to make a submission in support of this application? Not seeing any. Is there anyone present who would like to make a submission in opposition to this application? Come on up to the microphone. Please identify yourself and proceed, please.
Hi, my name is Elaine Rundle. I mostly have questions because I don't understand the whole political legal jargon that's used.
We're trying to be fairly
Okay. I know,
casual
but
here.
I use.
We have a process, but we try to
Yeah.
accommodate anybody's questions. So go
The
ahead.
map is horrible, so I just need some clarification. Ken, you did get back to me. Thank you. First of all, I do have a question for Victoria. I don't know if I heard her correctly. She said there was only one comment and concern from the meeting, the open house back in April,
I think
April 30th.
Victoria, can you clarify that, please?
Yep, through you, there was only one received.
Okay, I don't know if there was attendance taken that day, but there was
Well, there may
a
have,
lot of people here.
there may have well been lots of interest in the meeting and lots of questions
Yeah.
at the meeting, but
And
written submissions, there was only one.
we were given these
Yep,
forms
that's
to
the one
fill
that we
out,
have.
and a lot of us signed up with our emails that day. And yet a lot of my neighbors that I spoke to did not get a notice like I did, an email notice back on September 19th regarding this meeting. So I'm not sure what happened there, but something happened that they didn't get notified.
Holly's furiously taking notes back here, so hopefully we can rectify that.
Okay. again, I'm not clear on how all the wording and legal stuff is, but what does as of right mean?
Ken?
Yeah, so through your worship, as of right essentially means that the rules are established in the zoning bylaw. And so then there's no need for someone to go through a rezoning process to have their application considered. So if you think about the township has to have a zoning bylaw that sets out all the different zones and what uses can occur in those zones, and then the rules, like how far you have to be back from the street, how tall your building can be, parking, things like that. So the easiest example to think about is a garage. We have a set of rules for how tall your garage can be, how far from the house, how far from property lines it can be. If you fall within those rules and you make that application, then you don't have to go through any planning process. You go straight to a building permit. We still look at your site plan that you provide to make sure that you meet the rules of the bylaw, but you don't go through any public process. So for instance, if I apply for a garage and Shabby is my neighbor, if I meet all of the rules, then Shabby doesn't get to have any ability to comment on the application. It's simply, it meets the rules, and if it meets the requirements of the building code, then I would get a permit and then off I go.
Okay, all right,
The opposite to that is the current system that we have now, which is we have policy in our township official plan that says, here's the box that you can work in as an on-farm diversified use. And those policies come from a variety of sources, such as the provincial planning statement or Grey County's official plan, because we need to be consistent with them as well. And then some of it is also from discussion and direction from council. And that sets the parameters, but you have to go through rezoning to be able to actually do it. And a rezoning is a public process where neighbors within a certain radius might get a notice, although given current Canada Post circumstances, that might not always be the case. And then there's a meeting like this. So if I'm applying for an OFDU, Shabby is my neighbor, he might get notified. We would come to council in a meeting like this, discuss the application, and then council would make a decision.
okay. So
Does that answer your question?
it does,
Or help?
kind of.
Okay.
But would the changes in the proposed changes, would it allow for a small number of OFDUs to proceed without requiring a zoning bylaw amendment? So does that mean like certain farmers can, like, they get what they want without neighbors being notified? Is that what that wording means?
So through your worship, to make it simple, yes. So what an as of right process does is when you change the bylaw to create an as of right process, you do all of the consultation before you change the bylaw, which is what we're doing now. And that's why we had the open house, is we're having the discussion about, here's the box that you would work within. And as Bill pointed out, the regulations that are being proposed already align with policies within the township official plan. But what is proposed isn't going to capture all of the applications. We're looking at this as a small step forward. We don't want to allow all OFDUs to go as of right just yet. We want to see if this can work. We know that council sees quite a few of these, so taking some off of council's plate, we felt in light of the official plan might be a good idea. But at the end of the day, it's council's decision. If council doesn't approve the amendments, then all that ends up happening is that these applications would continue to come through the rezoning process. There would be a public meeting and council would decide.
Okay, but there was a public open house meeting where I know there was lots of feedback from a lot of people, and it obviously was not recorded because there was only one comment or concern. And
Sure.
where I know there was more people concerned about that
Okay.
in opposition to it.
I'll get the clerk to comment on that, please.
Thanks. So I just confirmed, while I was back there, we did send notification to every email that signed up on the sheet, and we only received the one written comment on the sheet that you had, that Victoria had mentioned. So we did notify all the email addresses that were left at the open house.
Okay. All right. And Ken, you got back to me with the, what, 2% of the property area, but can you put that in terms that I would understand, like on a 100-acre farm? How many acres of that farm would be allowed for the diversified use?
Oh, now I'm gonna have to do some math.
Yeah, I don't understand
acres.
hectares or, pardon?
2 acres.
It would
2
be-
acres. Okay, so is there, if there's 2 acres allowed per OFDU, conceivably, how many different industries could be on a 100-acre farm?
So one, through your worship, going back to.
Just one?
Well, it would depend, like, if one OFDU comes through and takes up that entire area of 2%, then you're correct, your worship, then it would be one. Conceivably, you
But-
might have an instance where if I propose a dry shop, but I don't use up the full 2, and then I want to propose another OFDU, I technically have room under that 2%. I'm not sure if Bill wants to chime in if I'm getting that wrong, but if you do leave some of it left over, then there is the possibility, but Bill, did you want to?
If I may, through
Yep,
through Mayor,
please.
I would agree that probably the way the rules are written now, they could potentially, as long as they're within the 20% operating area and the floor area requirements, put, say, a small shop or a winery with a cafe in the front, but they'd still have to stay under all the rules that are set out. We could take this comment back about if there's a concern about more than one, and we could write it very specifically to say only one per 100-acre property or 50-acre property, subject to those rules. But the way it's written right now, the director is correct that you could have 2. I don't know that you've ever seen one like that with 2, but I think it is potentially possible that you could perhaps have 2, but on no more than 20% of the, or 25%, whatever it is, the 2 acres.
2%, Bill, not 20.
Yeah,
So
2%.
On a
Yeah.
100-acre, on a
Yeah.
100-acre farm, then you could conceivably have a lot more than just one.
Well,
Ken?
through your worship,
Yes.
as Bill mentioned, there is a cap. So if you have one OFDU proposed and it takes up that entire 2%, then that's the limit, and you would only get one. Conceivably, you could have an instance where I propose a dry shop for my farm and I only use 1%. And so I have 1% left over that I could use for something else
Mhm.
and then propose a second one. But so long as I am not going above that 2%, then if these rules are adopted by council, then it would be allowed as of right. The cap would then kick in. So let's say I would end up at 2.5%. Well, that wouldn't be, if these as of right rules existed, then that would be a rezoning that would have to come to council. And there would be a broader discussion about provincial policy and the caps that are established, and whether it would be appropriate to go over that 2%, which would be something that, based on public feedback, council would have to then consider.
Okay, well,
Um,
that is a huge concern of mine, because conceivably on a 100-acre farm, you could have a lot of different industries.
But
You
you
could have
still
a
have to stay
cafe.
within that 2%
Yeah, and the
of
one,
land, that 2 acres. You can't have one on you can't have one for on 2 acres and another 2 acres over here and another 2 acres. You only get the
Okay.
2 acres
that's it.
cap.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Correct. And the one thing to keep in mind is that this is all aligning with provincial policy, which, you know, as a
Oh, yeah.
provincial priority, agriculture is a huge part of the provincial economy, not only locally.
Mhm.
And they want farmers to be successful and be able to diversify the operations that they have beyond cash crops or livestock. I did want to quickly go back to one thing that came up, which was the issue of notification of the neighbors. And so we did, as Holly mentioned, use the entire list, but we did get a number of emails that bounced back.
Hmm.
So if the individuals, when they were writing their names and email addresses, we went with what we could see, but if it was not legible, we may have gotten the wrong email address. But we did get some bounce backs.
Anyway, I think we pretty well beaten that one to death.
Right. Um, So, and again, I just want to be clear, if this amendment goes through, neighbors don't have to be notified, and there's no public input into whether they want this to go through or not?
So through
Ken?
your worship, only for anything that would fall under these new rules. And you've actually brought up a good point in terms of, do we want to look at the scenario that what happens if someone proposes less than the 2% and could they possibly get more than one OFDU? So we will take that back to look at. But if those rules existed today and I proposed a shop under those rules, then no, you would not be notified. It's anything that would go over and above or is not covered under these rules would be still subject to the standard rezoning process where there would be public engagement.
Okay, so that to me doesn't sound very democratic. Like if,
Well,
It's
think
some-
about it. Think about it in terms of farmer buys 100 acres and there's no buildings on it.
mhm,
If he wants to build a new cattle barn,
that's
long as-
me.
as long as that cattle barn fits within certain rules, i.e. distance from a lot line, all sorts of different rules, as long as it falls within those rules, that farmer is allowed to build that cattle barn. There's no public process.
Yes, that's farming,
Yes, it is.
but a cafe is hardly a farm. And, you
It's a
know,
farm use.
metal shops and
It's a farm use. Anyway,
it's farm use.
yeah. I see your point. I get your point.
It's, I don't know. If you're chopping up all the farms into like a welding shop here and a carriage shop there, and I don't know, it's not farming then.
It's farm use. We can argue all day, I guess,
Yeah.
but anyway,
Okay,
Counselor, sorry, Barb, did you have a point?
Just to this specific, I know that I'll have an opportunity to speak after, but I think to clarify that there are on-farm agricultural related uses, like a winery, they take the grapes, they make wine, and they might have a retail store. That would be a permitted use, provided it meets the threshold, that doesn't go over the threshold. And what we are creatures of the province. The province has said this is a permitted use. What we are being mandated with is to streamline the planning process so that we're not holding up development. I hear your point is, and this is why we're having a public meeting, is so that staff can take back those comments and concerns about limiting. If you get a shop, you get a shop. You don't get to have 5 shops. The 2%, that is the 2 acres, includes the maximum 750 square meter shop generating room. Also, it includes the driveway, the parking lot, the outside storage. So you can't you have to accommodate all of that within the 2 acres. If it was a 100-acre parcel of farm,
Okay.
to not, and to the mayor's point, it's not 2 acres on this corner and 2 acres on that corner, and they'll share a driveway.
Okay.
Just to be reassured of that. If that were to come back, then it would probably have to go to a public planning process if we write those into the rules.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so if there was a 10-acre parcel, could, it wouldn't be classified as farming?
Ken, do you want to just speak to that? Or Bill, go ahead, please.
Yeah, if I may, no, the smallest one that would be allowed as of right is on a 50-acre farm. And they would have to have a smaller, instead of 2%, say it's 1% of that operating area. And I should have added too, that I didn't explain at the beginning, that these are for farmers, bona fide farmers, and it's to supplement their income. And I would think that the rules that we've written probably need to be a little bit clearer to that effect. And that's another comment that would be helpful, is that they're seen as something to supplement the income and accessory to the agriculture. So they can't take over the agriculture, like you're saying. The agriculture has to be the primary use. So that's the main way the township does that, is by reducing the size that they can operate and keeping it within a confined area. But it is for farm income supplementation primarily. That's what it's for. And it's typically operated by bona fide farmers who reside on the farm, and they need this to help make the farm viable.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jim. Okay. So Ken, getting back to what you spoke to earlier, if this passes, it won't give a green light to C-37-24?
Through your worship, that's correct. We went
Okay.
back and specifically looked.
Okay.
And I was mindful of the concerns that you and your neighbors brought to the public meetings.
Right. Okay. I think that's all my questions.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Take
All
care.
right, any questions, or any further questions or discussion from members of council? Sorry, Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, the only change is to facilitate, as I said, getting rid of that one layer of red tape so it can move forward. And I'm assuming the as of right for the OFDUs is the same for as of right. I know it's not the file, but as of right for other accessory buildings in town. That as of right means as of right. But I've looked at it, nothing's really changing as far as the size and their limitations. We still go through the site plan. So it is just to get that one layer peeled off so it can move ahead. That's to simplify things from my head, right?
Through your worship, I think it's fair to say that this will not cover all of the OFDU applications that council typically sees through the rezoning process in a year. We never wanted to really go to that far of a step. We wanted to open the door to taking some of those off of council's agenda, given that you already have policy within your official plan that establishes the box that you can fit in. So yes, we were trying to really just make things easier for some applications, not all. So we talked about the one that was brought up by the residents that came to the open house. That application would still have to continue forward through the rezoning process, regardless of whether council adopts this or not. And keep in mind that if council chooses not to adopt this, then we just stay status quo. Every application comes to council and goes through that public process.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah, that was my point. It'd be status quo.
Yep.
Anyway, and I guess a comment to you, that hypothetical 1% that could still be used. When you look at these farm shops, a lot of it's used up in their lanes and parking further. So quite a bit of that is going to be used up anyway, I would think. It is still a hypothetical situation for it, but I think I can safely say for the most part, if it's 2%, most of it will get used up in some way, shape or form. So
Thanks,
We-
Martin.
yeah.
Joan, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So question is, so the proposed as of right on-farm diversified use, is this geared towards making it easier for farmers to diversify income by allowing more OFDU without a lengthy cost or rezoning process? Is that one of the main reason? So follow up, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Would there be any financial implication on the planning department or on the township since we're trying to alleviate the lengthy costs?
Good question. Ken?
Through your worship, this would not allow anything more than what the existing policy within the official plan would allow. That's the box that you've established. And so we're operating within that. Anything more than what would be established through policy or through these regulations would be subject to a rezoning and council decision. To your second question, great question, Councillor John. There would likely be a rather minor reduction in the amount of revenue that we would receive in terms of rezoning applications. But then again, the number of site plan applications wouldn't change because every time we bring an OFDU to you for a decision through the council process, you make a decision to make them subject to a site plan. So the current proposal would keep that the same. So there would be some reduction in revenue. To what extent that would be, I don't think we have an easy way to quantify that, but certainly 2 or 3 applications would be a reduction.
Thanks, Ken. Thank you for the questions, Counselor.
Thank
Monica, Monica, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Just want to do a tech check that you can hear me okay.
Yep.
Thank you, sir. So just wanted to thank you for the presentation to staff. To organize funding and support our agricultural community. I do have a few questions just to ensure that we are considering duties and potential intended consequences. So one of the questions that I did have, and if I didn't hear the answer to this, if it was mentioned earlier, I apologize. But just Chair, I believe to Planner, the proposed thresholds seem to benefit farms that are 20 hectares or larger. Has there been discussion about how smaller family farms or startups could also access diversified uses without being disadvantaged? Because I do understand the bona fide farmer, but also just wanting to keep in mind those that have the smaller lots.
Did you get that, Ken? Because I didn't. Be honest.
Worship, yeah, no, I think so. And I see
Okay.
Bill's unmuted, so maybe I'll let him start. and
All
I'll
right, Bill,
jump in.
go ahead.
Right. A smaller farm would have the option of rezoning, but there also allows on rural properties that are under very small, would allow a home industry. And a home industry, by definition in the zoning bylaw, is, I believe, 100 square meters in size, so it's quite a bit smaller. But even on a small farm, you could have a much smaller home industry on there, like a small one-person shop or vehicle repair, something like that, that supplements the farm income. So that's already in the zoning bylaw, and you don't need a zoning change for that. But they're quite a bit smaller than the things we're talking about here.
Just a follow-up, Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So just with that, and thank you, Bill, for that. How are we ensuring, though, that in terms of equity, that opportunities aren't just limited only to the largest operations? I'm just trying to think like maybe a line of sight as we continue forward. How can we still make sure that it's not just going to be benefiting the larger operations?
Ken?
So maybe I'll start and then Bill can jump in on this one. So through you, your worship, to Councillor Singh-Source, the as of right rules are only meant to allow a small number of applications to go through a process where they would not have to come to council. And so in terms of opportunities, if you have a farm that would be smaller than what the thresholds are setting, then they would still be able to access opportunities for on-farm diversified uses. They would just have to come through a rezoning process, which would have a public meeting and would be a decision of council. That's the difference. So the as of right sets thresholds that if you can meet them, you don't go through a public rezoning process. But if you're not within those boundaries, then it's status quo for everything else, which would be through a rezoning process.
Thank you. I did have a few more questions, but I'll hold off if anyone else, or Chair, if that's okay. You can let me know.
Oh, okay. Please.
Oh, thank you. So just thank you for that, Ken. And one of the other questions that I was having with regards to environmental and neighborhood impact. So are cumulative impacts being studied? So for example, if several OFDUs emerge along the same rural road?
So through your worship, I think it's important, and the deputy mayor made this comment earlier, that we are creatures of the province. So the province has made a decision that for all agricultural uses and areas, these on-farm diversified uses and related uses are things that can occur to help farmers supplement their income. And there's no ability to really regulate the quantity of these uses beyond the rules that we're establishing. So what I mean is, going back to the questions we had earlier, we would be setting out the idea that there's typically one. And as Councillor Shipston pointed out, when you're establishing these OFDUs and you set that zoned area, it gets eaten up by the shop, but also by parking and other things. So typically what we see is when someone comes forward, there's usually only one OFDU. But there isn't an ability from a planning perspective, because of the way the province has established this agricultural regulation system, or if you want to call it that, or policy system, to say, well, this farm has an OFDU, this one has an OFDU, but oh, you've reached a cap. Like, there isn't really a cap at all. It's if someone wants to apply for an OFDU, they have the ability to do that, and that's a choice that each farmer can make. And then the impacts to, say, the infrastructure, which we've had questions about from council when these OFDUs come forward, the tax lift that you get, because part of that parcel now is subject to a higher taxation, is meant to bring in additional revenue that is then available to the township should we be seeing an increase in the use and impact to our rural roads. But keep in mind that, we're subject to this provincial framework, and that's kind of been established. And I'm not aware of any municipality or county that has an ability to put a cap. I would suspect that if we tried to do that, the province would intervene.
Thank you, Ken.
I
You have another
do
question,
appreciate.
Monica?
Yes, actually, just to follow up directly to that point, and I did want to thank the resident that came up earlier that asked those very poignant questions, because that was some of the ones that I was thinking about. And just to the point that you just mentioned there, I know that it was mentioned earlier that as of right, uses don't require individual public notices. And the question about how will residents be made aware, when a new operation starts near them. Is there some more clarity about how that would communicate the difference between what still requires rezoning and what now happens automatically, to avoid public confusion, and also about the public notices if new operations do start? So I know that this is a amendment that is looking to be added, but I do think that, as the resident mentioned earlier, like clarification in layman's terms and getting a real hold on that. If you would be able to just speak on that, I appreciate it.
So through your worship, I'll say, Councillor Singh, you broke up a little bit, so I'm hoping I caught the whole meaning of your question. The obligation of the municipality or the township to notify only comes in when the process is not as of right, meaning that someone is seeking to amend the bylaw to do something that's not currently allowed. Or in this case, because we don't have as of right rules for an OFDU, all OFDUs have to go through that process. I don't have an answer for you in terms of mandating communication to residents, in terms of letting them know that an operation would come along. I would say that if we were to go and start doing that, it would be over and above what we would need to do in the process. There's a cost to that. So Canada Post has increased the cost of mail outs. So that would be a budgetary implication that we'd have to look at during the budget process.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. I see Councillor John has her hand up again, so maybe I'll go back to Joan. You're muted, Joan.
Yes, sorry, I was trying to get my mute button off. Just another question based on these. While this support the economic survival and succession planning for farmers, it also reduce administration burden by, what did I write here? By streamlining, and it also support rural development for farmers, Ken. But the challenges are, we're going to require careful management, infrastructure. We're going to have increased commercial activities on the road, which will be a strain for eye traffic. And we're also, based on my first question, losing money because of not enforcing some of the application might not be done. So for the overall shift, can you, and of course, all of this will not all of these will be coming to council. So could you tell me what are the positives out of this and why we should consider this and how good it would be for us to go this route? What are all the positive, what are the real meaning of this, and how will that make us operate better and more efficient?
Ken?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and I'll give Bill a chance to jump in after I'm finished if he wants to add something too.
Okay.
Because we've had this discussion internally as a team. First and foremost, I think what you would be achieving if you proceed with these changes is one of your strategic priorities, which is supporting your farm economy. You'd be striking a balance of opening the door to some applications to go through a much faster process, not all, and that would give council the opportunity to really get comfortable with on-farm diversified uses, because in looking back at all of the public meetings and public hearings, but also the decision meetings that you have when these come forward, about 90% of the OFDUs come to council with a report to recommend approval, and there's very little, if any, discussion about it. So that says to me that the council is starting to become used to these applications. They're getting used to how you've established the box. And it begs the question that if 90% of these applications are coming to council and there's no discussion, is it really the best use of council's time? Because it's not just about the time savings for staff. And yes, there would be some relatively, I would say, low impacts to the planning budget, because Correct me if I'm wrong, Shabby, I think a rezoning fee is around 4-ish thousand and change. So if, say, 4 of these OFDUs in a year were deferred, you're looking at what, $16,000 for a lack of revenue. But then these uses would get to a building permit faster. They could be built and constructed faster, which means the taxation uplift gets applied faster, because then MPAC will see it, and that would then start the uplift of your tax base far faster. Keep in mind that there's a lot of work that goes into every application that we bring you, in terms of the process to circulate, to notify, to organize these public meetings, to then write a report to bring to you. I can tell you I'm working on a report. It's now day 4. It does take a lot of time for us to put these together, because we'll throw everything into a report and then edit and whatnot. In terms of some other things, though, I think the biggest key is that achieving the support to your agricultural economy. You're saying to your agricultural farmers, we have a process that's fast. If you want to go and do this and you meet these rules, you'll get to a building permit within a very short amount of time. Bill, I'm not sure if I missed anything or if you wanted to add anything.
No, I guess you would have less consulting because I assist with these matters, but so there I would definitely see a reduction in my time, but a lot of that's covered by your revenue. But typically I would think, as Ken said, there would be a small reduction in the operating costs, unless development takes off in other areas and we're busy doing a lot of other things. But yeah.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Ken. Barb, did you have a question?
Thank you.
Thank you. I did have actually a couple of comments and questions, and some are related back to what other counselors and our guest has iterated. Cumulative impact is something that I've always asked about, and the concern that has been expressed here that we're creating industrial parkways instead of, diverting them to industrial parks, because the province says that it is on farm. That is by definition, it is to be on farm so that the industry supports or supplements. And it's supposed to be secondary in size, which is why it's limited to 2%. I still have concern about the lack of public engagement, and I wondered if, barring or understanding that 90% of these requests or applications have to go through the 20-day posting of signs, the circulation to people within 120 meters of the property line, a public meeting, that all adds additional cost. Therefore, if we're not doing that, the fee would be reduced, because the fee is supposed to be cost recovery. It's not supposed to make a huge profit. It's supposed to help compensate us for the time spent on an application, is my understanding. But if we're still having to circulate to commenting agencies like the Conservation Authority and Enbridge Gas and the Indigenous communities, the proponent or the applicant would still have to pay for those comments. So we're still having to go through that process, which is consultation. And so an as of right zoning bylaw doesn't eliminate all of that process. So getting to my question, one of my questions is, could the property owners still be circulated because they're the sensitive receptors, but not require a public meeting? Because our job is to mitigate the concerns where possible when we approve such on-farm diversified uses. We've established, we point the openings away from sensitive receptors. But if we, and 9 times out of 10, as you said, 90% of the time, we don't get any public comment. How do we distinguish between the 10% that could be controversial if they actually meet the as of right criteria and still engage with the public, because it's our job to make sure that the public are heard? That's my first comment, question, concern.
Ken?
So through your worship, I think we'll have to take that back. I don't have an answer for you at this point.
That's what the public meeting's for.
Exactly.
I did have another question.
Go ahead.
Because the province is suggesting that electricity generating facilities be added as an on-farm diversified use, if they fall within this as of right criteria, are we able to exclude them from the as of right? Because energy generating facilities comes with a lot of controversy. Battery storage facilities, wind turbines, water generating, solar panels, and in varying degrees. And I would have great concern that that would be lumped in underneath this as of right criteria. And our public, our residents, the people who are exposed to them and have to live with them for in perpetuity, or for at least 20 years, have no input or say. I'm a firm believer that we need to make sure that the people who are most affected have a say in these. And so I'm hesitant on the as of right. I understand it, and I understand because I've been at this table for a little while and know that we rarely get a lot of comments now. If we've met all of those, we've learned from the process. I'm concerned about that 10%. Thank you.
Bill?
Yeah, Mayor Milne, you may recall we did go through a bit of a process with regard to the industrial wind turbines and solar fields through our renewable energy amendment to your official plan and zoning bylaw. And we specifically did not include them as an OFDU, so they would still need, in my opinion, a rezoning change. Anything that needs a renewable energy permit. So if it's supplying power to the grid or to a broader area than just the single property, they definitely would need a zoning change still. And we were aware of the province's initiative, but we weren't comfortable either recommending that to you. But we did want to make it easier for individuals to put their own solar panel on or a small wind turbine for their own use. So we, through council, and I think council adopted the amendment, we did not allow those as of right, wind turbines and solar farms that are supplying to the grid. And we specifically did not include them here. So to the degree that the province is requesting those or suggesting those, I suppose you're a little out of tune with provincial policy, but also they put the rules in place so that these do come for zoning changes and need your approval. So I feel like you reached a pretty good balance on that, but I would totally agree that I don't believe on-farm diversified uses should include wind turbines that are commercial and supplying power to everybody else or all sorts of people.
Thank you, Bill.
I don't mind being a little out of step with the province.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see your hands up. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question with regards to if council will still receive a summary on tracking, a summary or tracking report of all approvals under these new policies, so we can also continue to maintain oversight.
So through your worship, actually, Victoria sent me a message related to site plans. I just wanted to quickly share that we actually, she pointed out something that we had talked about internally, that yes, we might see a dip in rezoning revenue, but because of the level of interest in the farming community to having an expedited process, we might see a corresponding increase in site plans. To your question though, Councillor Singh Soares, yes, you will continue to get the quarterly reports for site plan activity. And since these would be as of right, but still require a site plan, they would be included in that report.
I just had a comment, Chair.
Brief one,
Thank you.
please.
Absolutely. So I'm supportive of the initiatives that empower our farmers and modernize our planning tools. I just want to ensure that we have the right checks and balances so growth remains responsible, equitable, and transparent. So as we just move forward, I'm just hoping that all of these items will be at the forefront of how we decide to move forward. Thank
Very
you.
good. Yep. Okay. I think we've hashed that one out pretty good. Staff have some notes on some of the concerns or all of the concerns that everyone has. You're a little out of order, but go ahead. Come up to the microphone, please.
I just wondered if a qualifying farm that has these industries, do they still get the farm tax rate?
They will on the 98 acres.
Okay.
The 2
but
acres
then
typically goes to industrial.
Industrial, so that you will increase your,
Absolutely.
okay. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, let's move on then. If there's no further questions or discussion to the 5-minute bio break. Absolutely. That would be a great idea. So we'll recess for 5 minutes. We'll reconvene shortly.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll bring the meeting back to order. The next file is the official plan amendment, OPA 4-25 regarding conditional zoning. The proposed official plan amendment would create the applicable policies within the township official plan that would enable the application of conditions to zoning bylaw amendments. These conditions may include entering into agreements with the township for aspects of development or to implement a condition of zoning, a sunset clause for the zoning change, or any other conditions the township deems appropriate to uphold provincial planning interests. Once this policy amendment would come into effect, the township would need to enact a bylaw or amend the zoning bylaw to begin applying the conditions. Township Council gave direction to initiate the creation of these policies through report PL 2025-040 at the May 21st meeting of this year. The purpose of the amendment is to add enabling policy for the use of conditional zoning, which is permitted per section 3416 of the Planning Act. The goal of these amendments is to further expand the toolkit for the planning department when considering zoning bylaw amendment applications while ensuring alignment with both provincial and township planning objectives. The proposed amendment would apply to all lands within the township, and so a key map of the area affected is not provided. Madam Clerk, can I have, please have confirmation that proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act?
Thank you. Through the mayor, I can confirm proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act.
Excellent. Thank you, Holly. I'll now ask our planner, who's doing this one, Ken, to review correspondence received from commenting agencies and any written comments received by members or from members of the public. Ken.
Yes, thank you, your worship. If you'll indulge me, I've included that actually in a presentation that I've set up, so.
Drive on.
Okay.
Sir,
We'll
please.
see how well this works because you've actually jumped 2 slides, so. I've never used this button before, but as you mentioned, we're here to talk about an official plan amendment for conditional zoning. And council directed us to consider this official amendment back in May. Shown here is the current provisions in the Planning Act that enable conditional zoning. I would caveat this with the fact that we're still waiting on the province to actually initiate a regulation to bring this into effect. And so there's a couple of extra steps that will have to happen before we could actually fully enable conditional zoning. This is really about setting up our official plan to be ready for when that may occur. Conditional zoning is as it sounds. It's the ability to apply conditions to zoning bylaw amendments that come before council. It's another potential tool in the regulation of development throughout the township. In order to establish conditional zoning, there are 3 steps that have to occur. The first is this amendment. The second, of course, is what I just mentioned, the province establishing a regulation for conditional zoning. And as you saw in the last slide, the amendment to create conditional zoning came into effect in 2006. So we've been waiting for a while for this regulation, and there's been advocacy for allowing this tool. We still continue to wait for the regulation. Then the final step would be to amend the zoning bylaw to activate the ability for conditional zoning to occur. Really what we're trying to do is think ahead to how that regulation might be established, what limits the province might put on the ability to do conditions through zoning, and try to be as ready for that as we can. It may never happen. That is one reality but it's important for us to have the policies in place because organizations like Ontario Provincial Planners Institute, which is our governing body, continues to advocate to the province to activate all different tools. It's certainly a comment I'll be advocating to the ministry when we see them in November as well. And I know a number of other locations are doing the same. Technically, the city of Niagara Falls is using a form of conditional zoning. However, it's not clear to us how exactly they're doing it. It looks like it's more like establishing conditions through council council motions. So when you're going through the recommendations, they're establishing certain things through a motion of council to approve. We're not suggesting that we go through that other than instances where you make the decision to apply site plan control. That is still something we would have to do on certain applications. But at this time, it would just be a preparatory, if you want to call it that, amendment to our official plan to be ready for when this tool, if it comes into force. It is important to note that the amendment to the Planning Act really came out of understanding conditional zoning being used in the province of New Brunswick. And they're called Section 59 conditions. And that's because up until recently, New Brunswick actually did not have any site planning. So they had no ability to enforce any planning rules. And it's a different approach, but yet again, we're still absent of that regulation. And until the province sees the value in this is just setting our plan up to be ready for it. What conditions can be applied? It will really depend on the regulation, but right now there is some parameters that have been established, as you can see here on slide 6, in terms of applying conditions through an agreement. That agreement can be registered, so it's much like subdivision agreements being registered and things like that. We are also suggesting a potential sunset clause to zoning. It's something that has been talked about by planners across the province. We've also heard from the province a lot of language like use it or lose it clauses. We've had some discussion about the idea of use it or lose it clauses when you dedicate servicing capacity as well. We're still yet to see what the province comes back with. Yet again, this amendment would establish the parameters of those conditions conforming to what's in the act, but then we would also have to be mindful of any regulation if they sort of box in conditions and whatnot. So it's possible that we might not, we might have to come back and do a further amendment later on. We would have to see what the province comes back with. Oh, that's odd. This is not the right presentation because it doesn't have the summary. Because I changed the summary slide. One moment. Yeah, I'll go back to this slide. We did circulate the official plan amendment as per the Planning Act. We did receive commentary. I did update the slide, and I'm just going to bring it up here on my computer so I can go through it. There we go. So we did circulate as per the Planning Act to the required agencies, and we did post, as Holly mentioned, Enbridge Gas, GRCA and SVCA, as well as the Historic Saugeen Métis have indicated no objections. The Saugeen Ojibwe Nation provided commentary that they had concerns and required consultation. So we met with them on October the 8th and walked them through the proposed amendment and the current situation with the regulation and things like that. We've yet to receive any updated comments from them since that meeting. And then Grey County has provided comments suggesting that we clarify that the tool can only be used once the OREG is in place. And considering that this is really just an amendment to prepare our official plan, we're open to any feedback from the county that they have provided. So the next steps, obviously, we're here to take public feedback, and we'll go back and look at if there is even value to bring this forward. I think it's fair to say that it's still valuable for us to prepare the official plan so that we never know what the province is going to do day to day. They might suddenly see a value in activating this tool, and this way we're one step ahead of where we could be. So with that, that's the end of the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Did we receive any comments from the public?
I'm not aware of any public comments.
No.
Apologies,
Okay,
Your Worship.
good. There's no one present here that wants to speak in support or opposition, so we'll, unless Melanie, I see there's a Melanie on screen. Did you want to speak? Any further questions or discussion from council? Barb?
Thank you. And through you, Ken, there's a lot of red flags for me on this one. The county also suggested that it be deferred because only one municipality, as you said, the city of Niagara, has actually implemented a form of conditional zoning. Grey Highlands has something, but it's more to do, I think, with on-farm diversify. I think it's about, no, it's about energy projects. Your comment that we never know what the province will enact is further red flag for me. If we create a blanket conditional zoning official plan amendment and they come out and there's no indication as to when they're going to do this, it's been 11 years and there's still no sign that this is actually going to, there is going to be any enactment. I hate to see you spending time when you're so busy doing other things on something that may never come to fruition. But my major concern is that, as you said, we don't know what the province will enact. And if we have this in place, will it tie our hands and future councils? I'm always concerned when we eliminate the voices of the public, especially, I mean, I understand streamlining process to make it easier for the applicant and the developer and get things moving. But when you silence the objectors or the people with concerns, not you, this isn't personal, this isn't you. I have concern when the province just blanket makes all these changes when it's all about eliminating public consultation. So I'm more inclined to go with, I mean, I'm not making a decision today. I'm still open to seeing where this all lands because this is the public process of getting feedback. I think that's where I am right now. The scope of zoning being unknown gives me great concern. Thank you.
So through your worship, first thing is that conditional zoning wouldn't change any public engagement process. So think of it this way. I'll give you a hypothetical example. I buy a parcel in the downtown and I decide that I want to build the township's first very tall building, 5 stories, let's say. So right now the zoning and the policy doesn't align. Let's say the zoning primarily doesn't align. So I have to go through a zoning bylaw amendment. And so we would go through the standard process. Residents would be able to come and speak at a meeting like this. When the report comes forward to council, and let's presume that it would be a report recommending approval. If conditional zoning comes into being, then in that recommendation, staff would say, we recommend you approve the rezoning to whatever with the following conditions, A, B, C, D, E, whatever those are. And that's how conditional zoning would work. That's how Section 59 conditions worked in New Brunswick. And that's really what they're trying to mimic, is this idea that, you know, if in order for my development to proceed, I had to pay for certain upgrades, then as a condition of that zoning, I would enter into an agreement with the municipality on how those upgrades would happen. You know, how the holding might be removed, you know, what conditions that would be. And recognizing that we still don't have the parameters from the province, I totally understand where you're coming from in terms of the limitations. What we saw in our research was that a lot of municipalities have put policy in for conditional zoning, but then it just basically says subject to when the regulation comes into place. And that might be what we do. We're just trying to make sure that our plan is as up to date and as possible to try to stay ahead of the province as best as we can. I mean, I take your laugh with, I do the same thing when it's hard for me to say that without actually laughing myself because it's virtually impossible, but we're trying to presuppose some outcomes. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no rush or priority of this amendment. Council's given direction to consider it. We're not in any rush and we can't really use it. So at this point, it's not really a lot that we can do. We could simply just do what every other municipality has, which is put a provision in that says, well, when the province makes its call, then that's what we do. We're trying to think ahead and think about, well, what would they look at? But I mean, it is what it is.
Barb?
Just a follow-up, thanks. And I had written down on my notes is that I'm not opposed to the, sunset clause or any other things, but we already put conditions into our zoning bylaw amendments and our minor variances, and we already have a hold provision and that we've delegated that, if you meet all these conditions, then the hold can come off. This is just seems to be time that staff are spending on something we don't know when it's going to come down the pipe and that we're already doing. We already impose conditions. We're just saying that by having a conditional zoning that we're allowed to impose conditions.
Yeah, through your worship, I think it's one of these things where we saw an opportunity and then as we further investigated, there was the reality of where we are. So don't be surprised if you don't see this coming back anytime soon. Like
Thank
from my perspective, there's no rush to do this. There's certainly one of the other housekeeping OPAs that's going to come in November that we really put a lot of effort into that is far more important.
Monica, I see your hand up. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'm hoping my connection is stable, so I keep coming off camera. Can you guys hear me okay? Or is it choppy?
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Well,
Thank you so much. So just through you, to echo the points that were already made, that was kind of where I'm standing as well with regards to, because the province hasn't yet released regulations defining how conditional zoning can be applied. How will the township protect itself from legal or procedural challenges if we enable it now? So, for example, could an applicant appeal based on lack of provincial clarity?
Ken?
So through your worship, if we were to proceed with what is suggested, and let's assume that the county was to approve the OPA, we still wouldn't be able to use the conditions until all of the other pieces were in place. So the province would have to enable the regulation, and then we would have to amend the zoning bylaw. And those are the steps that are outlined in the Planning Act. So there wouldn't be an ability for an applicant to appeal because we wouldn't be able to apply the conditions until those other two steps were in place. And then to go back to Deputy Mayor Dubreen's question earlier, yes, there would be a risk that depending on how they set up the regulation, we might have missed something that they have decided to add, or we might have added something that they specifically prohibit. So, that was something that we didn't anticipate when we brought the original recommendation to council. And then as we've investigated this more, it's kind of, it's that evolution of understanding of a tool. But we wanted to still bring this forward to just get some feedback from council as to, do you see any value in us even bothering to put any sort of provision? I am of the feeling at this point, this is probably just going to sit on a shelf for a little while. That said, we do have a meeting with the ministry. The planners of the region get to meet with them in November, and I'm quite sure that OPPI will continue to advocate. So, like I say, this isn't one of those amendments that has a priority and needs to get done anytime soon.
Thank you, Ken.
Just a follow-up, Chair.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. So just to that point, and thank you for explaining that. That makes sense. would any conditions attached through this tool still come back to council for approval, or would they be handled at the staff level?
So through your worship, they would be, because it's conditions to a rezoning, they would be subject to council approval. If the tool ever becomes available, and if we do use it though, back to your original question, Counselor Singsource, then yes, an applicant could appeal conditions. Just as today, when we go through site plan approval, if we apply conditions, they can appeal those conditions as well. But yet again, until the other two steps are enacted, we can't use conditional zoning at this point.
Right.
Thank you.
Not seeing any further questions, we'll move on to the next file. Thank you, Ken, for your presentation there. The third and final file this morning is a official plan amendment OPA 5-25 regarding inactive applications. The proposed official plan amendment would create policies to address various types of planning applications where an application is paused for indefinite periods of time or fail to respond to issues raised during the review. The policies would allow for cancellation of applications after a defined period of inactivity, the application for an administrative fee if applications are dormant, and cancellation of applications if the administrative fee is not paid. These policies would not affect applications administered by the County of Grey on behalf of the township, i.e. plans of subdivision or plans of condominium. Township Council gave direction to initiate the creation of these policies through Report PL 2025-040 at the May 21st meeting of this year. The purpose of the proposed amendment is to provide policies related to managing planning applications where applicants have paused progress for excessive periods of time or not responded to issues raised during the application review. Paused or dormant applications still require resources to manage and fail to progress to a decision in a timely manner. The proposed amendment would apply to all lands within the township, and so a key map of the area affected is not provided. Madam Clerk, has proper notice been given in accordance with the Planning Act?
Thank you, through the mayor. I can confirm that proper notice was given in accordance with the Planning Act.
Thank you, Holly. I'll now ask our planner to review correspondence received from commenting agencies and any written comments received by or from members of the public. Ken?
Thank you, Your Worship. Once again, I've put a presentation together with that.
Very good. Proceed, please.
And once again, you've taken my notes from the first couple of slides with your speech. So let me just, okay, here we are. So as council is aware, the primary function of the planning team is processing a variety of applications under the Planning Act. As a team, we work with applicants to bring applications to council or committee in a timely manner, or in the cases of a staff delegated decision, to make those decisions as quickly as possible. But these applications belong to the applicant. They are the primary advocate. We can only deliver on timely service when both sides are working in sync. In some cases, applicants may decide to pause an application, or in some cases, they may, to use a term, go dark and fail to respond to inquiries from our team. This may be for a variety of reasons. The proposed amendment will provide policy to deal with applications where an applicant may not be progressing an application or have gone silent or failed to respond to inquiries from our team on how they are addressing concerns from the public or providing additional material or information. The amendment would apply to any Planning Act application, excluding those administered by the county, as you mentioned earlier, Your Worship. The amendment mirrors policies which were used by a number of different upper tier municipalities and regions for dormant applications, applying a monthly maintenance fee after a year of no progress, and that year is based on the date in which the application was deemed to be complete. If the maintenance fee is not paid, or there is still no meaningful progress with the paid fee for one more year, then the application would be deemed abandoned and canceled. Similar policies now exist in official plans throughout Ontario. as municipalities manage their planning processes. And one example is that Niagara Region has similar policies in their now no longer active official plan, since they are a municipality without planning responsibilities. But that policy has now been absorbed by the local municipalities because they had to absorb that official plan. Timing of how these deadlines would apply would depend on when the application, of course, was deemed complete. If approved, this amendment would only apply to applications made once the official plan amendment comes into force. If an application is abandoned, then the protection under the Development Charges Act of Section 26.2, which is the determination of when, of what development charges apply, because they may change, would no longer apply, since they would have to start their application all over again. In essence, as I say, it's a brand new application. This would be implemented through the application forms. When an applicant has their application commissioned, an applicant would have to accept that they would be subject to these new policies, which is why it would only affect applications once the OPA comes into force. It is important to note that the vast majority of applicants work with our team and make regular progress to get to a decision. The proposed policies are for the rare instances that progress suddenly stops. Inactive applications do still take up staff resources. We get inquiries from residents and agencies on the status and what progress, if anything, has occurred on an application. By enabling these policies and allowing us to manage applications that go dormant, this impact on resourcing can be eliminated. Oh, good, this is the right one. Then I'm not gonna look. That's distracting. So as mentioned, we have done the notice as required by the Planning Act, and the OPA was circulated to the required agencies. As you can see, Enbridge, GRCA, SVCA, and this Historic Saugeen Métis have indicated no objections. Grey County has provided comments stating there is no means to undertake this amendment through the Planning Act. I would note that the Planning Act is basically silent on process issues, other than what the province directs in terms of circulation, notice, things like when you have to process an application by. So for instance, 90 days or 60 days. Many issues have no foundation in the Planning Act. Swapping of settlement areas, for example, from one location to another, resulting in no net increase to the settlement area, was not established in the Planning Act, yet was done. This resulted in a change to the PPS, but yet there is no foundation for that to have occurred for many years and was still done. Another area where we don't have any direction from the Planning Act is when an application is commissioned and a municipality may apply a statement that says a staff member may enter onto the site when evaluating the application. There's no foundation in the Planning Act to make that request, and I would point out that Grey County, along with Southgate, uses such a statement, but yet there is no foundation. Planning Act does set out rules for the process, but then it leaves municipalities to govern the rest of the process outside of the Planning Act and the provincial policy statement, other than suggesting that the process be efficient. It's the team's opinion that this amendment should proceed. The county has no reason to be concerned about the township's planning process. Finally, we are here to seek public feedback and feedback from council, and the public meeting is mandatory. And so with that, I'm open to questions from council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any questions from council? I see on the screen, it describes it as Jim's iPhone. Is that Jim Ferguson or Alice? And if either or, do they have a comment? Question? Nope, don't hear any. Any questions here in the chambers? Barb?
Thank you. And through you, I'm supportive of having a process to deem a file inactive. But I'm kind of under the impression that we already have something in effect, or it's more of a standard operating procedure since there doesn't seem to be a provincial requirement. Recently, we had a couple of applications that went silent. They had their first public meeting, there was a lot of input, and then there was no progress made. Staff did their due diligence, followed up with the applicants, nothing. And it was determined that after a certain period of time or if the application changed to some degree, that the clock would start ticking, would restart, and a new public process would be required. If we can already do that through a standard operating procedure, why do we need an inactive? Why do we need to go through this formal process?
Ken, please.
Through your worship, I think it's incumbent on us to have policy in place so that it's clear that when an application does go dormant for an extended period of time, they can expect this sort of thing to happen where we're going to charge a fee. And if they don't pay the fee, or if they pay the fee, but then there's still no meaningful progress, we're going to move forward. I think one of the things that I always look at is when you get into something like this and you're getting into what could be conceived as a major decision, because you are technically making a decision. And that's a key aspect of the Planning Act is council or committee makes a decision to either approve with conditions, or not approve whatever is before them. To make a determination that the application is deemed abandoned is a decision, but it's not technically a decision that the Planning Act conceives. And so by establishing some policy, you wouldn't run into this easy ability, in my mind, for someone to challenge that decision because council's already thought about this process and said, well, if an application goes there and takes a significant amount of time, they don't want it to sit on a shelf and languish. Like, let's move on. Someone else can take that spot and progress. In terms of what you were speaking to earlier about a couple of applications, we do as a team keep on applicants on a regular basis. It's not clockwork. We don't have something that sort of pops up and says, oh, it's been 3 months, we should. But we do keep an eye on applications. And I will say that in the case of some applications where there's public concern, the residents help us stay on top of that because they, like I say in the presentation, they call and say, what's going on? And just, I forgot to mention, there were no public comments for this application either. But in terms of applying this, I suspect that this is going to be rather rare, but as we continue to see our application volumes grow, just because we are not seeing it now doesn't mean that in the future, as our volume of applications grow, it might not happen, and we should be prepared for this. And so my feeling is that by having council weigh in and say, this is our process in a more formal setting, it puts us in that position to be able to secure making the decision to say, we've been at this for 2 years, 3 years, you've done nothing. The file is now abandoned. If you really want to seriously proceed, come back to us when you're ready to go.
Makes it clear to everyone what the expectation is.
Yeah, and sorry, Deputy Mayor, I saw your hand. I didn't mean to jump in, but the other thing too is, as I said at the beginning, the file belongs to the applicant. The applicant is the advocate for their file, and correspondingly, they are responsible for their file. So what this does is, through an amendment to the OP, council is saying, this is your file, you are responsible, you are accountable to progressing this application forward. And if you don't, here are the consequences. It's putting that responsibility back to an applicant.
Barb?
Thank you. And I'm fully supportive of making it clear and fair and consistent with all applications. And by creating a policy, whether you call it an official plan amendment or a policy or a standard operating procedure, it sets the bar and it makes it clear for everyone. Everyone is treated the same. I do have a concern about maintenance fees when you talk about after a year of dormancy, you apply a maintenance fee. And then for another year, it goes on. And that just seems to be more administrative work for staff. I don't know if it's possible to just like, does there have to be a maintenance fee? Can we just say after a year of no contact or activity, we consider the applicant dormant or abandoned or whatever? And this is just feedback. I don't want to create more administrative work for our finance department. There's a maintenance fee and they're not paying it. And now we have an outstanding accounts receivable, and you can't put it on their taxes. And it's something more to track. So maybe there's a way to avoid that administrative nightmare and get the decision or the determination sooner. But thank you.
If I may, Your Worship,
Yep.
the simple answer is no, we don't have to do an administration fee. It was just an idea that we saw in our research from a couple of other locations. And frankly, we thought that might be a good idea to try to perhaps provide a bit of a stick to maybe encourage an applicant to start moving things forward. But no, we don't have to. So
Martin?
fair comment.
Oh, Martin, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Ken, I'm looking at the cover letter that's on here. That was the only question I had, the monthly maintenance fee. If they're in default and they have to come back and pay a whole new bunch of fees, they're gonna pay for it. As you said, it's their fault, not the township's. So that's the only thing that's kind of struck me, a monthly maintenance fee for somebody who's not paying anything anyway or doing anything. So it's kind of redundant. That was my only, other than that, I think it's very proactive, especially when you say increasing volume of applications. If there's that, there could be somebody going into receivership that doesn't pay or any bunch of reasons. So it's good to have as a policy or whatever you want to call it. But that was my only question.
Good point. Thanks, Martin. Monica, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just wanted to, add that I support the efforts to improve efficiency and manage staff time efficiently. One of my questions was around how would applicants be notified? So would it be registered mail, email? Would there be a public posting? And would there be an opportunity for appeal or reinstatement process?
Yeah, so through your worship, there wouldn't be an ability to appeal. The way that we've contemplated the application of this, as I mentioned in the presentation, is much like how we along with many other municipalities in commissioning the application, say to an applicant now, hey, by commissioning this application, you're also allowing us to go on your property. There'd be another statement that by signing and commissioning the application, they understand that they're subject to this policy if they don't advance their application. In terms of notifying, I look at it this way, we would have to notify them that they've reached that 1 year of dormancy, which would be the first step. And that to me would likely be an email where we would do, read receipt and all of that. We might also follow it up with a letter where we would require signature for it to be proven that it was delivered. So, taking the comments that Councillor Shipson and Deputy Mayor DeBreen have suggested about not having a fee, if we were to say reduce the process and at a year they become abandoned, then at about the 6-month mark, we would then likely send an email with a registered letter to say you're dormant. If we don't see any meaningful progress in 6 months, we'll consider the file closed. And then we would do the same again at the end to actually deem it abandoned.
Thank you, Ken. Just a quick follow-up, if that's okay?
Sure.
Thank you, Chair. So just to that point, and thank you for, defining that there. I know with the times that we are in, especially for small businesses and, making sure that they get financing, would there then be any flexibility for extensions in cases where an applicant is waiting on another agency approval or financing delays?
So through your worship, what we didn't specifically put in the amendment was what happens if we were to notify you that, hey, you've now reached the first step and you're now dormant and you risk being deemed inactive. And from the team's perspective, I'll say that if I was the applicant and Xavi sent me a notice saying I'm dormant and I risk being deemed abandoned, so long as they reached out to us in some way, whether we would want it in writing, of course, so likely an email to say, oh, I'm waiting on funding for this, or my surveyor is doing this, or whatever organization is working on my environmental impact study, that would be sufficient for us to say, okay, and we reset the clock. That's really what we end up getting when we reach out to applicants to get a progress update. As it is now, we'll usually check in and say, where are you with X and Y? And when they provide us a note back saying, oh yeah, the surveyors will be out on site or what have you, we're usually satisfied with that. We're not trying to create a whole bunch of administrative barriers to that response.
Thank you. And I think that the reasonable terms in which you have set out, essentially township, is the key. And so I do thank you for adding that in. It does help.
Thank you. Barb, you have another question?
I do, thank you. And it just occurred to me that if we go down that process and at 6 months, there's been no activity on your application, you have 6 months to update or 3 months to update. And if and there's a fee. 2 questions. Or one example is that there was a recent file that just went to a public meeting, but it actually started in 2019 because they were in the process of environmental impact studies, consultation with various environmental impacts and wetlands and architectural. So they were busy behind the scenes. So your example to that, if they tell us what they're doing, they're still working on the file. It can take 5 years.
Meaningful progress.
Meaningful progress. It has to have meaningful progress, as the mayor said. The question is when they originally apply, they have to pay an application fee and agency comment fees and all of that that's non-refundable, correct?
So your worship, the only refundable portion of the fee is any of the unused contingency fees that are taken to help offset the costs for when Triton does an engineering review.
Okay. So as an opportunity, instead of a maintenance fee, we could tweak the definition of contingency fee to include maintenance should the file go dormant. I'm not saying that we do this, but it's something that we can consider to lessen the administrative process, but also to accommodate staff's time in following up on what is the status of your application. So maybe that's something that could be added to the option.
So just in terms of your question through you, your worship, Deputy Mayor, one of the things that we do in a case like the example that you provided, and yes, the key here is meaningful progress. So they are working away. And if that's the case, and I will say that's probably 99% of our applicants, this is going to be fairly rare. that's fine. What we tend to do though, is if a significant period of time happens from their first public meeting and the application changes because of the work that they've done, or because they are working to address public feedback, then we will require them to come back to council through these public planning meetings, and we do charge a second public meeting fee to offset them being on another agenda. The other thing I'll add too is that, yes, they pay the application fees that are at the time of when they submit, and we do increase fees based on inflation every year. When we have a situation that an application lasts for as long as you mentioned, or might exceed the contingency fee because of that amount of back and forth, then any of those excess fees that are now, we've exhausted their contingency, we bill them back. And we also have processes in place that if for some reason they don't pay those fees, we have mechanisms to get those fees back. So for instance, if a rezoning leads to an agreement of some kind, there is a standard clause within that agreement that before it's executed, they have to pay any outstanding taxes and fees. And council may recall, you'll often see a similar condition when we deal with consent. So.
Very good. Any further questions? Not seeing any, I'll declare this public portion of the meeting adjourned at 12:27.